Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our strategic webinar on Business Aviation Flight Plan to Net Zero. My name is Marilyn Bastin, and I'm the Head of Aviation Sustainability in EUROCONTROL. And I would like to thank you for joining us today for this new webinar. In this webinar, we will be exploring how business aviation is planning to achieve net zero carbon emission by 2050, while supporting the entire industry's decarbonisation. But before starting to discuss the decarbonisation of the business aviation sector, I would like to share with you some of the key figures about the European business aviation sector, and I would like to thank IBAA, so the European Business Aviation Association, for sharing those figures. So the European business aviation sector contributes to 87 billion in turnover to the European economy. It provides more than 300,000 highly skilled jobs, directly and indirectly, and it connects Europe through 1,400 airports. In terms of movement, we speak about more than 700,000 movement, arrival and departure. Business aviation connects many small European communities and local airports, improving connectivity across Europe. Could be private jets, corporate aviation, air taxi, and more recently, flying cars. And it also provides life-saving air transportation in times of public need, including fire and rescue and medical evacuation services. So it represents an essential transportation link for communities without scheduled airline services. In 2009, Business Aviation published a Business Aviation Commitment on Climate Change supported by the entire industry. This commitment is the foundation for everything that the sector is doing towards reducing their impact on the climate and on environment. And more recently, those goals have been updated to become more ambitious, and the sector is also now committed to achieve net zero CO2 emission by 2050. And I would like to thank Gamma for sharing this nice visual. Business aviation manufacturers and operators are in a strong position to decarbonize their flights, with significant investment in sustainable aviation fuel and the latest aircraft technology. Many environmental innovations are first tested in the business aviation sector before being scaled up for use in commercial aviation. Business aviation activity on sustainable aviation fuel took a significant step forward with the publication of the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Guide, as SAF is one of the biggest opportunities for this sector to achieve its climate goals. For this topical discussion, we have lined up 3 senior figures from the manufacturing, aircraft operator and airport sector to share their insight on the key role that innovation and technology will play in business aviation flight paths to net zero carbon emission. Together, we will be addressing the following leading question. How does business aviation strategy support the decarbonization of the wider aviation industry? How could the EU Fit for 55 package support business aviation to achieve net zero emission? How can innovation and technology support the net zero objective? What is business aviation already doing to speed up decarbonization? And finally, what are business aviation's main commitments to achieve net zero emission by 2050? And now I would like to present our outstanding panelists. I would like to start first with Mr. Ian Moore, Chief Commercial Officer for VistaJet since 2010, and is also Director of a company's UK subsidiary. He is responsible for global market expansion, commercial negotiation, sales, marketing, customer service, and product delivery. He has also worked in various roles for NetJets Europe from 2002 to 2008. Then I would like to introduce Mrs. Irina Zeria. She is the Business Aviation Manager for the Vinci Airport Group. She started with Vinci in 2004, and she had different positions, among which Business Aviation Developer for Chambéry, Savoie, Grenoble, Isère Airport, and more recently, she was the Regional Business Aviation Manager for Chambéry, Grenoble, Toulon, Clermont-Ferrand, and Lyon-Bron airports. Irina is also a very active member of the European Business Aviation Association, providing inputs and technical expertise to various working groups. And then finally, I would like to introduce Mr. Frédéric Leboeuf, Vice President Falcon Operational Support in Dassault Aviation. Frédéric is an aeronautic pilot and also a licensed fighter pilot with maritime patrol experience in the North Atlantic. In 2001, Frédéric was hired by Dassault Aviation to support their Mirage 2009 team supporting the Emirates program. Then he joined the Falcon Customer Support Leadership Team as Deputy Director of the department in charge of operational support to the worldwide customer base, for which he has been leading since 2013. So each panelist now will make a 5-minute presentation to present their view on how business aviation is planning to achieve net zero emission by 2050. And then I will open the floor to a question and answer session. Some of you have already sent some questions, and I would like to thank you for this. We will pick some of those questions. But if you want to shape the discussion of today, please don't hesitate to put your question in the question and answer function. You can also chat directly with us, but it's more for technical comment or any general remark. So for your question, please use the question and answer function. Now I'm sure you are impatient to listen to each of our panelists, so I would like to give the floor first to Mr. Jan Moore. So Jan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marilyn. And yeah, thank you for inviting us along to such an important project and important conversation, frankly. So I have a couple of minutes presentation. If we can just get to page 1, if that's possible. First of all, we have an ambitious plan for 2025. I'm going to take you through that plan and our road to carbon neutrality. Next slide. So firstly, a little bit about our company. We're the first and still only global business aviation company. We've covered 96% of the globe. We have 80 mid-size and above aircraft. We have offices based in many different locations around the globe. We have a team of over 1,000 experts, 60 different nationalities. So we take our global status very, very seriously. We've flown over 521,000 passengers and keep counting. And we're the company, the first and frankly, the only company that's pioneered the flight hour subscription plan. So effectively, our customers have a fixed hourly rate and they only pay for the hours they fly. Our entire business model is based around creating and continuing to drag efficiency throughout the system. We feel this industry before we began was incredibly fragmented, and we felt there was many different advantages, not just economic, but obviously the topic of sustainability today of creating those efficiencies. Next slide. So our commitment at VistaJet is to be carbon neutral by 2025. As mentioned by Marilyn, I didn't update my slide, unfortunately there, but the tradition before, the claim before was to have, as an industry, a 50% reduction of emissions by 2050. I'm rapt to see that that's now changed to being carbon neutral by 2050. We feel that we can do more. And we feel as a company, we'd like to lead the charge. Again, because of our global status, we're able to influence many different parts of the world with our plans, but we're also putting a stake in the ground. We just want to be the start of a conversation, and we'd love to hear from every other operator how we can get to these goals as a group or as an industry. But why are we doing this? I think for obvious reasons. Aviation produces 2% of global carbon emissions. We all know this. The percentage of that of private aviation is smaller, but still optically, we want to make sure we're on the right side of history here. Passenger traffic is expected to grow significantly all the way through to 2037 and beyond. And frankly, we all have a responsibility. It's beyond the right thing to do. It's about the survival of our industry. So we take this incredibly seriously. Next slide. How are we going to get there? I'm going to skip through this relatively quickly because I think we'll get questions later on later on about this. But first of all, we're not the experts, so we brought in strategic partners, Sky Energy, South Pole, for example, not just to help us build our programs, but also to audit us to make sure that we're doing what we said we were going to do. We have a carbon offsetting program, a global SAF program, Our aircraft are all new. Our Global 7500, for example, has its own environmental product declaration. We have many operational efficiencies, not just in our business model, but also the investment in technology. And all the way through, we plan to have external auditors and report our progress. So that's our plan, and we want to be as transparent as possible, not just to the industry, but to our customers and the wider public. Next slide. The impact to date by numbers, we've talked about SAF and the theoretical opportunity that's there. When I say theoretical, in terms of just the size of SAF into the ecosystem, but this can, in its pure form, can reduce carbon by 85%, which is an extraordinary number. Our own carbon offsetting program, 80% of our Vista members voluntarily went into this program within the first month of our implementation. So this shows you just how much of this is pushing in an open door. Our investment in technology has reduced fuel consumption by 8% per flight, and we're continuing to evolve that technology with AI. We create an early booking program that reduced our empty legs, which is another inefficiency in our system and in our industry, by up to 20%, and we're continually pushing that to get higher and higher numbers. And we've removed 90% of all single-use items off our aircraft to have sustainable alternatives. So these were just some of the examples and some of the results of our early steps in reducing emissions. Next slide. So thank you very much, Marilyn, for my chance to present what VistaJet's doing. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I can hand it back to the panel now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. I think it's a really important message here, because you are a global aircraft operator and you are committed to even more than to be net zero emission by 2050. It's about 2025. So I think it's a really important message here about what the business aviation sector is trying to do and really to push for the decarbonisation. So thank you, Jan. And then I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Irina Zeria from an airport point of view now. So Irina, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about this very important topic. So I am from Vinci Airport, as you told, and at Vinci Airport we manage, build, develop, finance, operate airports. Today we are operating 45 airports in the world, and in a few weeks we will be 53 from the 1st of January. In France we have 12 airports with a strong business aviation traffic. And we operate, for example, Lyon-Bron Airport, which is the third business aviation airport in France. So we are very committed in the business aviation as well. So we are the first airport operator to have implemented a global environmental strategy in 2015, with the ambition to reduce our greenhouse gas emission by 50%. Compared to 2018, before 2030, and we plan to be neutral at 2050. So regarding our results, because we have already the results on scope 1 and 2, and with reducing our own emissions, and we are now working on 3 main projects in the scope 3. To decarbonize aviation, so the sustainable aviation fuel, of course, from the airport point of view, because we must be facilitator, and to give the possibility to the operators to use this type of fuel. Another project, a very interesting one, is hydrogen. So we project at Lyon Saint-Exupéry Airport to open a green H2 station at the airport field. So it will be the first project. And the third one is the carbon sequestration for residual emissions via carbon sinks. So we do this already in Lyon in partnership with ONF, which is the French National Forest Company, and the Rhône department. So of course, we do many other things at the airport and our FBOs, and each of our FBO is integrated to the airport. So everything which is done also for the business aviation, like waste management and everything. We have already established a carbon modulation and last year, and we are the first airport operator to propose this. So, well, yes, we are very committed in this question, of course, because we believe that the mobility is essential for the development, for people, for life, and we need to find altogether the solution to make this mobility better. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. I think, again, we have strong message here because it's really important to hear from Vinci Group that even if you are operating many different kind of airports, you are also investing in SAF, hydrogen, in airports in which we have business aviation flying too. So I think it's really important because we know that SAF is one of the key enablers to decarbonize the business aviation sector. And I would like to know more about the carbon modulation, but I suppose that we will have questions about this later on in the question and answer session. So thank you very much, Irina. And then I would like to give the floor to Mr. Frédéric Leboeuf. Please, Frédéric, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marilyn, and thank you for inviting me. Dassault Aviation, as you all know, is a major actor in the aeronautic world, but I will not spend too much time to describe our long history in aircraft. As an OEM, of course, we are working to improve our models and then stick to the objectives that Marilyn presented to you during the introduction. So very briefly, what are we doing? In terms of technology, we are participating to two major organizations in Europe, CESAR and Clean Sky. With CESAR, we are supporting all efforts to ease traffic, like continuous descent and free flight, and with the impact into the avionics of the aircraft. With Clean Sky, where we are since 2002, we had a lot of works with all other participant members, and those works allows to reduce drag and aircraft weight, so reducing fuel burn and for sure, obviously, emissions. More globally, with all OEM, we are improving fuel consumptions, and we are very proud of achieving those commitments of 2% per year. More internally, in terms of research and development, we have developed some solutions like head-up display, which is combined with an enhanced vision system to reduce the risk of diverting, and reducing the risk of diverting with a high level of safety. We are also reducing emissions and fuel burn. We have promoted since 2012. We are promoting the use of SAF because we had the first flight with the Falcon 20 in 2012. We have, 3 years ago, we have defined some good practices to operate our aircraft, and it was distributing among all our customers. And since 1 year, we are developing a software to optimize the trajectories. And because you remember, and as Marilyn said, we are landing in many airports, secondary, primary, and 3 times more in Europe than commercial airlines. With regard to the company level, we have developed new processes in our factories and production lines to reduce the carbon footprint. We have our new buildings in our facilities that are 30% more efficient than required. So I have a very short message. We have, since a long time, been the cradle of innovation. We are investing in R&D more and more. We are working with all actors for the air traffic management, for the SAF suppliers, producers, with the operators, and also I would like to add with the administration, because we have to support regulatory requirements and also a policy framework which for example can recognize some processes, new processes like book and claim, but I think that we will speak of that later during the webinar.
Yeah. Thank you, Frédéric. I think also they had different kind of message, but what I would like to take here is really the role of technology and the fact that as an aircraft manufacturer, you are also working on flight efficiency, which I think we should not forget because it's also one of the pillars that we need to do to decarbonize. And also the role of clean sky, because it has also been mentioned by Jan during his presentation. So I think that research programs are really, really important because we really need to continue to work on more innovation and technology. And indeed, for the book and claim system, I think it's something that could be interesting to discuss in the question and answer session. So it's a good transition now to say that we are going to start our discussion in our question and answer session. So as I have explained at the beginning, we have already received some questions. So I will kick off the discussion by choosing some of the questions that have been sent by the audience before the webinar, but I will also select some questions of the chat, so don't be surprised if I'm looking to one screen or the other, it's because I have to read the question in the chat. I will select some of the questions if they are relevant for our speaker, of course, because if they are not, it's difficult for me to ask them a question on which they can answer. So don't hesitate to shape the discussion, and we will try together to have this interesting conversation about the decarbonization of the business aviation sector. And so I propose that we start by a question that we have received before the webinar, a question from a low-cost carrier. So a little bit provocative, I must say, but I like provocative questions, so be ready. Considering that CO2 emission per passenger by private jet are over 8 times higher than for commercial flight, isn't the fairest way to reduce emission for private jet to reduce the amount of private jets to almost zero and to make sure flights are only taken on high load factor commercial flights? So it's a quite provocative question here, and I think I would like to give the floor to Jan for this first question as an aircraft operator.
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Marilyn, and a great question. I think the first point is really looking at what private aviation brings. I think long gone are the thought process, or at least the view of aircraft, maybe in the 1990s, of caviar, champagne, and strawberries, right? I think these days, what's happening when a private aviation is moving from one location to another is traditionally commerce is being created, billions of dollars in deals, financial deals being done, governmental processes and advancements in technology, in cultural understandings of what private aviation brings, I think always needs to be factored in when you're looking at the advantages and disadvantages of the industry. I think also too, a good example of what happened when COVID hit and really the commercial airlines and the network really collapsed. At that point in time, private aviation stepped up, was moving things like vaccines, moving respirators, moving people that were stranded in different locations. And that's where commercial and private aviation can work together. So the thought process about this industry and the fact that it is creating a lot of value, as I said, not just in employment, but also and financially, but also too for individuals and for corporations and for governments and everyone worldwide to have a better understanding of each other. I think that's the advantage of private aviation that I think is sometimes not included in some of these kinds of conversations. And our industry is here to stay. I think what our job is, though, is to ensure that we're doing it as efficient as possible. And I think that's an important part of every single industry, whether it's the technology industry, whether it's the food industry, or whether it's private aviation. And I think that's been our goal, and that has to be every single operator's goal. But also our thought process is that operators should get together and work with EBAA and IATA and everyone else to be able to move together and create the best and most efficient way to operate, because there's so many more advantages than just flying a couple of wealthy people around.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. And Irina, I think you want to complement on this.
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn. I just wanted to speak about our carbon modulation on landing fees. It could be just one of the answer. It's not the solution, of course. But we put it in place last year. We started with French airports. And the principle are very simple. It's a modulation which is financially neutral for the airport. And it's based on bonus-malus principle. So the aim of this modulation is to encourage the airlines and the operator to move to the green fleet, to more efficient from the carbon point of view fleet. So this modulation is based, as I told, on the landing fees, and we take into consideration the carbon emission during the landing takeoff cycle. So, and it's also, we take into account also the number of seats offered by the aircraft. So in this way, of course, the carbon, let's say, the carbon print of each passenger is different, and the business aviation also pays for this. So what I want to say by this, let's say the modulation is the same, the calculation is the same for everybody. Commercial flight, business aviation flight, light generation, aviation, everything that's the same. But we take into account this number of seats offered. And of course, the business aviation, as it's transport less passengers, pays maybe more for the same aircraft. But that's important to say. So we are trying to apply the same calculation mode for each aviation.
Yeah, Irina, thank you very much, because I think it's really important to mention that business aviation sector is paying for this. So indeed, it could be a way to manage this. And yes, Jan, you would like to complement, please?
Yeah, I would just like to mention one more thing, obviously with private aviation, and particularly the way our carbon offsetting program works. We, regardless of how many passengers are on that flight, the offsetting program is based on the entire aircraft. Whereas on the commercial side, a lot of the offsetting programs are based per passenger, and it's completely voluntary. And my understanding is those numbers are quite low, whereas basically the entire aircraft, regardless of the number of passengers, is contributing to the carbon offsetting program. So I think it's very simple. It's a very simplistic way of looking at this question. And really, once you get into the detail, you see not just the advantages of the private aviation industry, but what we're actually doing under the hood to make sure that we're reducing our emissions. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think it's an important precision here that you have made on this point. So thank you very much. I will take now a question in the chat. I think that it's for all panelists. What type of SAF are you looking at investing in? So I will maybe start with Frédéric, because he was speaking about sustainable aviation fuel during his presentation. So Frédéric, please.
So we, in terms of sustainable alternative fuel, we are currently use 30% of blend. We are pushing and working with all engine suppliers to increase the percentage of blend, and for sure this is the main way we are working on as of today. Really, we need to have for sure production and availability, but we are very optimistic in reaching very high level of blend in the future.
Okay, thank you. And Irina, maybe as an airport, in which SAF do you want to invest in?
Well, at the airport, we don't invest in SAF, but we facilitate the access to the SAF by the operators. Today we offer SAF at 2 airports, at Gatwick, which is a big airport, and a smaller one, Clermont-Ferrand, which is in France, where we supply with SAF produced from used cooking oil. And we supply Michelin Air Service, which is the company from Michelin Group. And they are, by the way, the first operator which flies with biofuel in France.
Okay, thank you. And Frédéric, please.
Yes, thank you, Marie. I would like to add that for me there is two challenges. The first one is to try to increase the blend, for sure, and reach a high level. But the other challenge is to supply and distribute among small airports. And the challenge for business aviation is to be able to find SAF, let's say, everywhere. I think this is the big challenge we are going to face in the next years.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Irina, you want to?
Just wanted to add on this, because as I told in the introduction, that we manage many airports with a strong business aviation traffic, and these are the small airports. And we understand that these airports are important for the business aviation, and the business aviation is important for these airports. And from now, we include the SAF project in each renewal of contract with fuel suppliers, even at the very small airports with seasonal traffic. And we are aware that in some upcoming years, the business aviation will use more SAF than commercial one. And that's why we want to be ready before 2030 to offer this kind of fuel to all our business aviation clients.
Thank you, Irina. And Jan, finally, please.
Yeah, funny, thanks. Well, I think it's important to mention our global SAF program is effectively what we call book and claim, which means that we're not limited by our own aircraft's restrictions on what blend you can use. What we're doing is effectively introducing or supplementing the industry's fuel to be SAF rather than jet fuel. So effectively, a client can be flying from a small airport, one of maybe Irina's airports, and want to use SAF, but maybe at that stage there's no SAF there. So we will be investing that money into the ecosystem to allow a aircraft to be using as high a blend as they possibly can on their particular flight. So maybe that we are subsidizing a commercial flight, a commercial aviation flight flying on SAF in some way, but the actual airport that the client's flying from may be using traditional jet aviation fuel, jet fuel. So with that in mind, it's a most efficient way to get around the small airport problems and get around some of the restrictions, as Frederica mentioned, in terms of blends for particular aircraft and what restrictions they do have. So we feel this is the most efficient way to get SAF into the ecosystem, and it's been really successful so far.
Yeah, Jan, I think it's a really interesting proposal here. Frédéric, do you share his view about the book and claim system?
Yeah, yes, totally. We think that it's a very good system. I just want to highlight that as of today, it's not a recognized system, because we need to find, let's say, the institution support, the commission support to implement such process, and probably also more incentive process, because we need to push the implementation of SAF. Book and claim is probably the main process to be implemented in a very short term, but we need support of commission to do that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Irina, as an airport, investing in SAF, even on smaller airports, do you also support the book and claim system to complement the Fit for 55 package proposal and EU refuel SAF blending mandate?
To be honest, I cannot respond to this question, but in this Fit for 55 package, so we spoke about SAF and other obligations which are addressed to the airport are electrification of all its equipment, and we work hard on this, trying to electrificate all our ground handling equipment and everything. So, but
yeah, Okay, thank you, Irina. Maybe a question for Yad in the chat, you know, what percentage of clients are asking for SAF today? So do you have the perception that your customers are asking for sustainable aviation fuel or maybe more green option?
Was that a question for me? Sorry, Marilyn?
Yeah, it's a question for you, Jan, sorry.
Yeah, sorry about it. Yeah, no, it's been an education process through the whole thing. So yeah, we do have, and particularly it could be certain flights that mainly corporations are looking to do, that they're looking to have SAF as part of what they do. Obviously the cost is, you know, is a lot higher than traditional jet fuels. So that's something that we're working on, but it's not prohibitive for our clients. And what's interesting, and as a small little anecdote, we deal with some of our customers who then themselves are under pressure inside their own families to be part of carbon offsetting programs, but also be SAF, where the younger generation are demanding it from the older generation. And that's really encouraging to see, both that the older generation's listening and that the younger generation feels very strongly about this. So no, we're seeing more and more of it coming through. But it does take a little bit of explaining. It's not as easy as the offset program to explain to people and how it works. But the more we do that, and the more we do that as an industry, the more we're going to see the economics of SAF become more attractive. But I think availability is probably the biggest challenge for now.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. And just to finish on SAF, there was a question in the chat about 100% SAF aircraft. So it's maybe a question more for Frédéric. So from a Dassault point of view, could you explain when could we hope for such kind of aircraft?
I will not give you a date as of today. As I told you, we will work with the engine suppliers to increase the more as we can the percentage of blend, for sure. And if we can reach one day 100%, we'll do that for sure. It's a global effort, and we cannot avoid looking that way.
Okay, thank you, Frédéric. And now I would like to change the subject. I have a question in the chat here about the quality of carbon offset. So do you think quality carbon offset have a role to play in this journey to carbon neutrality for business aviation? And I would like to give this question to Jan, because it's part of his current program. So it's maybe something on which you could elaborate. And it's maybe also an opportunity to give maybe more concrete example about your strategy, because you explained that you have different pillars, you know, for the decarbonization, and how you want to achieve this carbon neutrality by 2025.
Sure, and it's a great question. I think first and foremost, we took our time. We took over 2 years to build our strategy, and we wanted to make sure it was comprehensive. Hence why we have so many pillars to the program, and the carbon offsetting is an important element of it. But what we wanted to focus on was the quality of that offsetting, and we know that there's been some impressions, or maybe even some fair conclusions, of previous offsetting programs that have been around, some skepticism that came with that. So we wanted to make sure that we're investing in projects that also match what our company does. So we looked at projects in different parts of the world that were truly global, that were audited, that had transparency attached to that. And that's been everything that we've tried to do with our 9-pillar policy. And part of that plan is to make sure that we are, you know, audited, we are transparent, and we are kept to account. And I think that's part of the offsetting programs in general, is making sure that they are concrete, they are of great quality. And obviously there's different qualities and different prices you can get. But we're not looking here to make ourselves feel better about flying privately. Our job here is to make sure that we're contributing and making greater change to an industry that we feel has a huge place to play in the world economy and world cohesion, frankly. But we know how important it is that we are authentic with what we do, and that was part of our pillar policy, to our white paper that we've got on our website that we're introducing to ensure that we've introduced, sorry, that we want more and more operators and more people to critique. Because frankly, the best way the industry is going to move forward is if we have an open conversation. And if someone else has a better idea than what VistaJet's doing, we will unashamedly pick that up and run with it, because really it's not about competitive advantage in this particular environment. It's about it being authentic, about being real, about creating real change. And I think that really gets to the core of the question, which is really how to make real change and do that quickly. And that's why the quality of offsetting programs is so important.
Thank you, Jan. I have a question in the chat for Irina about the hydrogen project. So they would like to have more details about this project. Is it meant for aviation or is it meant for other purposes?
Well, I'm not a big specialist of the question, but I will try to give more details. So the project is today to create a station for the liquid hydrogen in partnership with other industrials like Air Liquide, Airbus and Dassault Aviation. We plan a deployment in 4 steps. The first one is a short-term step with the distribution on the land side of the airport, so not an air side, for passengers or companies in the catchment area. So the second step will be in 3-4 years. So the second station for producing, storage and distribution of this green hydrogen. So for the heavy mobility like buses, trucks, logistics, and and also the runway, from the runway side, the ground handling equipment and everything. By 2030, so the truck-powered liquid H2 storage to power the first hydrogen-powered aircraft, so in the future. And the last one, 2035, 2040, and A2 liquefaction plant in partnership with Air Liquide to be able to produce the liquid H2 at the airport. So I cannot say more because I'm not a specialist of this, but it's a new, very new project at Vinci Airport and very ambitious one, and for the future generation of the aviation, of course.
Yeah, but it's great to hear that you are investing in different kind of energy, because all this energy will be useful, you know, for the future with the new entrance. And so maybe now on shorter term, I would like to ask to maybe Jan, what is on short term, you know, what can be done now? Because we always speak about the future and SAF, it will come one day and so on, but now, what can we do? What can we do?
I think, Marilyn, it's a great question, and I think it's hard for the greater conversation to stay on today versus tomorrow. So I think from what we've focused on, technology gains in terms of efficiency, incentivizing efficiency through our customer base. We've done that as well. We'll see great reductions in our empty legs or flights without people on board to reduce emissions through efficiency gains. Technology, again, is going to be a big driver. Obviously, so many more parts of technology. You talk about different types of fuel, etc., or different types of energy, but also technology in creating efficiency in the way operators operate is going to be incredibly important today, and that's something we can do today. And the other thing we can do is maybe look at it from a regulatory perspective, and you know, some examples of that. Less so for Europe, to be honest with you, but for the world is, you know, some of the cabotage rules, for example, differ from country to country, and that's everyone's right to do so. And I understand protections of local operators, but some of the rules are put in place to ensure that even international flights can't be done by other operators, which means you just end up having a lot more ferrying of aircraft in and out of locations as passengers are dropped off and picked up. And if we can create more efficiency through regulation as well, and creating more competition, but that competition will help drive greater efficiency, I think that's going to be advantageous today, and that's something we can all do today as well. So we would love to see what the future holds in terms of technology. We know the things we can do today, particularly the carbon offsetting and the book and claim through SAF, and the way we operate our offices and the way we move our pilots around, etc. There's so many things we can do today. And that's the reason why we have that goal of being carbon neutral by 2025. We're not waiting for engines that are going to improve in the future, which is going to make a huge difference in what Frederick is talking about. But we can't wait that long. We've invested in our aircraft. And it's also one of the reasons why we stay on the cutting edge of technology with our aircraft as well. We always look at the newest aircraft that's out there. The fuel efficiency alone, the way they operate is so much better than older aircraft. And that's been an important part of the VistaJet strategy for many, many years now.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. And Frederick, maybe you would like to complement as well on both the shorter terms and also the regulatory support.
Yes, in very few words, I think that in an immediate future, what we can easily do is work and apply a policy of optimizing trajectories. I think it could be very easy to implement. We have software and we have many things in place that could help optimize all trajectories. Second point, and I think we already discussed that, is work on the availability on SAF, even with the book and claim process or whatever, but push and improve and support and help delivery of SAF. And there is also a question of price and taxes behind that. And I would finish that with probably be a support of the institutions, but and that's also what just Ian says, that but I think we need that tax policy ensures that the products will go to research and development first, and that also the tax policy create a fair competition in Europe, but also with when we have to oppose us operators or OEMs to other worldwide competitors.
Thank you, Frederick. But I think I have, again, a question for you, because I was reading the chat, and in base with your flight efficiency, there is a question about what can Air Traffic Control Center do to reduce emission and assist airlines in reducing their carbon footprint. So what can a controller do to help you to optimize the trajectory?
Oh, it's for us, it's easy. Help us to climb in a short time. Help to have a direct let's say routes to where we are going. So and we have a tool in development which is going to optimize the trajectories, but efficiency could be I think put in place very easily with a good dialogue between air traffic management and crews. And we have ways to go directly from a point to another now. It's quite easy. We have some ways to implement also some continuous descent, which would reduce either fuel consumption but also noise. So I think we have quite some tools which can be very easily implemented right now.
Okay. Thank you. And now to change completely as a subject, because we didn't discuss about noise, and I see some point about it. We received a question from EASA. What is the view of the panelists on supersonic transportation? New aeroplanes are under development and they are expected to be used by business aviation. So maybe, Jan, this is a question for you again. Do you plan to invest in supersonic?
It's a great question. Again, it's one of those far out into the future conversations. We, at this point in time, are focusing on the newest technology we have at the moment with our Global 7500 and all the efficiencies that aircraft brings for the customer experience. For supersonic, we keep our eye out for it. Obviously, our type of clientele will be interested in this type of aircraft. We're global, so it has to really solve the sonic boom problem to be able to really get the advantages of it. So we really need to be a part of that conversation. Our clients will drive us towards that as it comes closer. But we're waiting in the sidelines. We're interested, and we're watching as certain OEMs are starting to really step up their development in that area. And we're excited to see where that would go. But at this stage, we're an interested observer rather than an active player.
Yeah, thank you, Jan. And Frédéric, as Dassault, what is your view on this?
I will start from a regulatory point of view. I think that we do not have, as of today, regulatory requirements in place either in the FAA world or in the EASA world. We have many discussions they have many discussions in progress. For what I know, the first step of regulatory requirements in the FAA will start with subsonic, so they are not yet in supersonic. And I think that in the EASA world, we are not yet ready to start with those kind of projects.
And maybe then I would like to ask the question to Irina. Do you have some customer asking to use for supersonic in the future? Are you ready to accept them?
Well, for the moment, we don't have this kind of questions. I think it's not really the priority today. But well, I would say that we will be ready to welcome each kind of aviation at the airports, of course, because the airport is one of the link of the value chain, of course. So if the industry is ready, we will be ready, of course. So, but today, we don't have this kind of questions.
Thank you, Irina.
Thank you.
I had several questions about non-CO2 in the chat, and it's true that it's something that we didn't discuss at all. So maybe I will start with Frédéric. From a technological point of view, is it something that you work on as well, or is it mainly focused on CO2?
So we are currently focused on CO2, on reducing as much as we can the CO2. We are looking at what kind of work are producing outside the company. But as of today, with the kind of aircraft, the models we have, we are concentrating on reducing as much as we can dioxide emissions.
Yeah, but I also think that when you are promoting the use of sustainable aviation fuel, at least there is a consensus that it will also help to reduce the non-CO2 effect. I don't know if Jan wants to complement this.
Not much more to add. I think ultimately, we ourselves are focused mainly on the CO2 component. I mean, 91% of all emissions that we are creating are coming from our flying. So we have the bigger goal. Our biggest goal in mind is focusing on CO2 for now.
Yeah, and Irina, of course, for you, it will not be about contrails, but about air quality as an airport operator. Is it something that you are already taking on board in your strategy?
As airport operator, on the reducing of carbon emission.
Not only, also on non-CO2 part, meaning air quality,
okay.
So could be NOx, for instance.
Okay, so as because we are talking about carbon, of course, but I wanted to add that it's not only these actions. We take other actions in other fields like circular economy, waste and preservation of natural environment, water, biodiversity. It's at our French airports we have a bees. Some bees which are I don't know how to bee stations with honey production, and it's something very interesting. So we have honey for all employees of the airport each year. So yes, of course, we are working on this, of course.
Okay, thank you. I see that the time is running, so I think it's time to wrap up this discussion. But before concluding this webinar, I would like to give the floor a last time to each of our panelists to share their main takeaway or to share a final message to summarize this webinar. So I will start first with Jan.
Sure, Marilyn, and thank you so much for having us on. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think there's three words that I'd use to describe what we're focusing on. One is cooperation. I think we're only going to do this together. Not one company or one part of the industry is going to be able to get to these goals. We need to make sure we work together. Cohesion, making sure that all elements of private aviation is working in cohesion to be able to do this. That means geographical cohesion, along, in terms of industry cohesion. There's a lot of competition in our industry, but this is going to be, a major focus for, I think, every operator and every part of the ecosystem for now until we get really on top of it. And the other one is urgency. And I think that was probably the main reason we announced our white paper, while we announced our focus on being carbon neutral by 2025. We want to do this, and we want to do this today. And we're not going to do this alone. We're going to do this with the help of our partners, with the industry as well, and hopefully some of our competitors. Ultimately, this is going to be a win-win if we can all find the right focus for this. So they're the three words I would use, and that's what we've focused on that inside our company. And I'm really proud of what we've been able to focus on and achieve so far, but it's only really one step in a marathon.
Thank you, Jan. It's a very strong and positive message. Thank you very much. Irina?
Yes, so thank you for all this discussion. And I see again that as airport, we are really the facilitator, and we are trying to respond to the market's needs in the business aviation as airport. So the industry needs SAF, so we need to be quicker than the regulation and offer it at the small airports and all of this. So it's really, really interesting discussion, and I was happy to share it with my colleagues and clients. And so thank you for this time. And like Jan told, that we need to work all together, because this topic is not competitive. This topic must be the one for everybody, and then we will be stronger.
Yeah, thank you, Irina. I think it's really important indeed. As an airport, you are a facilitator, and you can increase collaboration between all stakeholders. So really appreciate it. And then finally, I would like to give the floor to Frédéric.
Thank you, Marilyn, and once again, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for those very good exchanges. We are committed to continue achieving the very challenging goals we have between 2020 and 2030. This is the first point. And second point will be the same as for Irina. I think that, and that's we are trying to do,
we lost Frédéric. So maybe if we catch him later. So I propose to make the wrap-up of the webinar. So European business aviation is a dynamic sector that fosters technical innovation and sustainability improvement across the full value chain, from manufacturers to operators. Business aviation is a lifeline for communities, be it for medical transport or as a tool to help government and businesses generate local economic development. The recent update of the business aviation commitment on climate change to be net zero emission by 2050 is an important milestone. The pathway to this objective includes investment in new aircraft technology and sustainable aviation jet fuel. It's why the uptake of SAF is essential. Flying more efficient operation, building and using efficient infrastructure, and the use of effective global market-based measures. Therefore, innovation and technology are a key enabler to achieve net zero emission, and this strategy also supports the decarbonisation of the wider aviation industry. The Green Deal calls for an integrated approach to sustainability. This means taking into account market realities to make the decarbonisation shift possible in a way that also improves the efficiency of Europe's air transport network, enhances EU competitiveness, and increases growth. The sector is ready to contribute and to pay their part, but it should be fair and harmonized. Moreover, this taxation should support the development of SAF, the funding and capability of future hybrid and electric aircraft systems, and also the implementation of a single European sky to allow better trajectories. However, in the current provision and definition of the Fit for 55 proposal, it appears that around half of the operation will be excluded from the benefit of using SAF, which could prevent them to meet their own business aviation commitment on climate change. The business aviation community is convinced that a robust book and claim system could overcome the negative externalities of an incremental approach that will make SAF available at key hubs only and will favor airlines flying to those key hubs. Business aviation is also working on noise. Noise continues to be an area where aircraft manufacturers put considerable design time and investment toward reducing aircraft-related noise. To summarize what has been said by our panelists, there is a need for more coherence and rationality, but the business aviation sector is on the right track to meet their challenges and to achieve net zero emission by 2050. The commitment is there, the solutions are there, so let's make it happen by supporting them. Finally, I would like to thank our three panelists, but Frédéric has really disappeared, for their great contribution, and also the viewer for the very active participation in the chat. So as I will not see you anymore until end of this year, I wish you all a happy holiday season and a prosperous new year. And I hope to see you next time in 2022. Thank you.